Here at Total Carp, we get sent in plenty of different products by plenty of different companies to test, review and show off to you guys, the anglers. But every so often we do get to keep hold of some of these items for a little bit longer to do something that we call a used and abused. And that's exactly what we're here for today. So come with me, I'm going to check out some rods that I've been using for a long period of time. So in here are my Daiwa Longbow X45m rods in 13 foot, and they're what I've been using for all of my long range fishing. If you watch any of the Total Carp videos, mainly the vlog or videos where me and Matt have been at the club lake, these are the rods I've been using and putting through the paces, and I've absolutely loved them. So in this video, I'm going to tell you a bit more about the rods and exactly why I love them. So let's get into it. In pretty much everything in life you need the right tools for the job, and you can probably see that I'm now wearing a coat, and that's because it's gone really cold. But we're not here to talk about the coat, we're here to talk about this rod. Now, like I mentioned, I've been using these rods for over a year now, and they're definitely the right tool for the job. They've massively helped my long range fishing, and I guess you can say that has actually resulted in me catching more fish. I'll come onto that a bit more in a minute, but for now, let's talk about why I got these rods in the first place. So when I first started fishing the club lake, I was greeted with a big pit full of snags, weed, big bars, big gullies, a lot of water, and it's something that I'd never really fished before, so it was a little bit daunting for me. And I knew from knowledge from Matt that a lot of the fish like to hold up at long range, between 100 yards and 150 yards, depending on the swim that you're in. And with the gear that I already had, I wasn't going to be able to fish effectively at those distances. I would have been able to do it, but not as well as I could have done with the right tools for the job. So when the longbows came into the office, I got my hands on them and I knew that these would be the perfect tool for fishing the club lake, and I wasn't wrong. Now, one of the reasons that I knew it was going to be tough with my other setup was that I have to fish with heavy duty line, 0.40, 0.39, it was quite heavy duty with a strong snag leader, just to make sure that I'm fishing safely in all that weed and the snags that are out there. You can't be fishing with light line, which is often used for long range fishing. And that's one of the reasons that I knew I needed something just to help me fish more effectively. With my previous setup, I really had to put some effort in just to hit the clip, and it probably explains why I wasn't catching a great deal. I just wasn't fishing very accurately. I was hitting the clip, but 9 times out of 10, I wasn't fishing exactly where I wanted to, which, as you will all know, fishing accurately can be one of the most vital things when carp fishing. The particular setup that Daiwa was sent in are the 13 foot, 3.5 pound test curve rods, and they really pack some power. Now, the Daiwa Longbow range is steeped in history, but they've recently been upgraded in almost every single way. The Longbows now feature the same magnum taper profile that the Bezier and the Infinity rods have, alongside a whole host of other features, including X45 technology, which reduces rod twist and increases accuracy, which is clearly something that I needed for fishing this lake. Now, I have to admit, at first I wasn't convinced, and this was purely the fact that I'd never used a 13 foot rod before, but after the first session of using them and really giving them a good cast, not just at spots but to different distances just to get a good feel for them, I quickly became quite used to them, and well, the rest is history. Now, there are a few things that I've noticed I've improved on from using these rods. Now, the first one is distance. Now, obviously with a 13 foot, 3.5 pound rod, you're going to get a bit more distance than you might do with another rod. However, I found it's been a hell of a lot easier casting at range. Beforehand, I'd never really fished at any kind of range up to 27 wraps, and that's something I needed to be able to do on this particular lake. And now I've increased that distance and I can fish comfortably at 30 wraps, even with solid bags. Now, being able to cast 30 wraps is great, but if you're not accurate, then what's the point? And that's the second thing that I've noticed a massive improvement on. The accuracy of these rods has really helped my fishing. I've caught more fish because I've been casting to those spots accurately in less casts, and I've caught more. That's the base of it. I know I'm fishing better because I've caught more fish. And that leads me on to my third point. I mentioned there I was hitting the spot in less casts, and Obviously, the more casts you make, especially when you're putting a lot of effort into it, you're going to become more fatigued quicker. Now, if I can hit those spots in less casts, I'm going to have more energy, and effectively I can put more effort into my fishing as a whole. And that's a massive deal if you want to catch carp. If you're happy just sitting by the lake and chilling, no worries. But if you want to catch, then you do need to put the effort in. And I can honestly say, I know I sound like a broken record, these have helped me do that. I've fished more effectively and I have caught more fish. Now, I'd love to say that the reason I've become more accurate in my fishing is because I've just got a better angler. Now, there will be some element to that, but with that X45 technology, it's allowed me to put the effort into the cast to make sure I'm hitting the clip without affecting the accuracy. Now, I'm not saying that this will solve inaccurate casts, but it definitely helps when you're trying to put distance onto those casts as well. Now, I mentioned earlier that I'm using pretty heavy duty line to combat all those snags and the weed in the lake. 0.40, 0.39mm diameter, and that has not changed. And from what I've found, it's not affected the casting whatsoever. With all the technology built into the rod, the magnum taper profile, the lightweight C-guide TDG guides, the line leaves the spool fluently, and this is obviously going to help with fishing at range. Now, the guides actually have a slightly wider internal diameter, which allows the line to leave the spool smoother and quicker, and therefore the thicker line hasn't really affected my fishing whatsoever. Now, when it comes to playing fish, you'd think a rod like this is a bit hardcore and doesn't have a great tip action. However, that magnum taper profile gives you the best of both. You've got plenty of power in the butt section and then a forgiving and responsive tip. Now, this has been an absolute pleasure to play fish on because, like I mentioned, the lake that we fish is full of snags, full of weed, and you do need to be able to give them a bit of oomph in certain situations, and these do that absolutely perfectly. I still feel like I'm actually playing a fish, not just dragging it in, but I'm also aware that I'm under full control in those situations. Even when using light zig line, I felt like I've been in control the whole time. When you've got confidence in the kit that you're using, you're solely focused on landing that fish. Whereas on the flip side, if you were focusing more on your kit, there is a good chance that you might end up losing the fish in the playing process, and that's not what any angler wants to do. So overall, when I say these rods have improved my long range fishing, I don't say that lightly. I genuinely have improved my long range fishing since I got these rods. Since improving my confidence at fishing long range at the club lake, I've then been able to transfer that onto other venues where I've had to fish long range as well. And I've not been worried one bit when I've arrived at those venues. I've known that I can fish accurately, confidently at long range, and that is down to these bad boys. Although saying that, I would like to think that my casting has improved quite dramatically anyway, but like I said at the beginning of the video, when you've got the right tools for the job, everything becomes a lot more easy. Now, initially when I did the video about the features and the specs of these rods, that was at the club lake and I was doing quite well, caught a few fish and I was starting to see improvements. And it's been a long time since then and the improvements have just kept coming and coming and coming. And since then I've caught loads more carp on these rods. Recently the action's been coming on zigs. We are in spring, although it doesn't feel like it at the moment, but all the action's been coming on zigs, and sometimes it's been fishing at longer ranges, shorter ranges, a whole host of different areas of the lake, just trying to pick them off when we see them show. Being able to cast to those fish has been the key to catching them. Now, in those instances, we weren't always wrapping up because we'd see them, we'd cast to them, and we'd catch them. Fairly simple fishing. However, if I hadn't been able to cast that far, would I have caught them? Who knows? But overall, I've absolutely loved using these rods and I will continue loving using these rods. They aren't going anywhere. But there we go. That is pretty much everything I've got to say and my honest opinion about the Daiwa Longbow X45m rods. If you do want any more information on these rods, we have done a previous video, like I mentioned, on the specs and the features of them, but you can also visit Daiwa's website, which is www.daiwacarp.com.